My name is Girish. I'm a conservation activist. I've been involved in conservation in a place called Chikmagalur, which is in the state of Karnataka. So I'm associated in working on two particular areas, Bhadra Wildlife Sanctuary and Kudramukh National Park, since around 1987. First of all, we have to know how our life is very intricately interwoven with forest and wildlife. Basically, if you look at the two, three things that we need forest for, for the very survival of people or wildlife or humanity or any life form in the world is oxygen, water. Then, we come to fuel wood for energy purposes. So all these resources are coming from the forest. The other things is, all our food crops, whatever we eat, it comes from forest. In a way, it is cultivated over a period of time, and we only have about 15 or 20 types of food that we have developed from the wild, and we use them in our daily life for our survival. We also use medicines, which again are the sources that are from the forest. So our life cannot be in existence without the forest. That's probably the most important thing. So if we have to have quality life, if we have to have a healthy life, we are dependent on the forest. So unfortunately, in today's circumstances, why there is so much stress on forest conservation is because we have reduced the amount of forest from say 90% or 100% to about 15 to 20%. So it becomes very important for humanity to understand this aspect of the earth where there's very little forest is left. So I think this is very important for our own survival. Number two is, especially in South India, we are all dependent on the Western Ghats and the rain and the world weather for our own survival. If we have to have rivers flowing, if we have to have rains, if we have to have our agriculture, food crops, etc., etc., we need this huge amounts of water. If our cities have to survive, if they have to survive in a good way, we need water. Most of our water comes or originates from these Western Ghats, whether it is Krishna River or Tungabhadra, Kaveri, any of the South Indian rivers. So all the rivers take birth in these Western Ghats. They flow down, feeding millions of people with the much needed water requirement, agriculture, and so on and so on. So it's very important that it is basically the Western Ghats are responsible for the entire South India, starting from Gujarat, below Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala. So these four states, parts of Tamil Nadu, all these fall in the Western Ghats and all the rivers. So if you look at the overall country of India, it's probably, the bottom part entirely, probably 1/3 of the entire country is fed by the Western Ghats. So the northern rivers are slightly different because they are depending on the Himalayas or for the ice melt and so on. But southern part of India is definitely dependent on these rivers, which are the only source. If the Western Ghats are gone, there is no water, definitely no water. So if you look at the world scenario, they are either carbon sinks where, they absorb a lot of carbon and, give out oxygen. So the Western Ghats plays a role, like Brazil or Amazon to the world, we are dependent on these forests for our survival in at least in our country. So I think it's a very important factor that, we have to consider. So I think from our own perspective, for our own survival and for our well-being, it's very important that we at least preserve whatever we have. As you know, that the area of forest is reduced. Now it is 4% or less than 4% of it is protected area. We have outside protected area some 10%. So it is between 15 and 20% is under forest cover, green cover. It is less than 20% of the land is under forest cover. So it is very important that we have this, whatever is remaining. So I think it's very important that we kind of understand that, we have, degraded, deforested much of our land. It's only this little patch of land that is remaining, and it is all the more important to safeguard it, preserve it for our own survival. Forget future generation. Our present survival is completely dependent on this. So I think that's a very important factor that one has to, be aware of. So biodiversity is something, again, it is related to forest and the natural environment and the biological presence of many animals, whether it is animals, whether it is birds, whether it is plants, whether it is insects, whether it is frogs, snakes, smaller mammals, and so on, including rocks and soil and everything, herbs and plants and so on. It's a composition of many things, biological things which are not tamed or which are not cultivated. It's all natural. So they've taken thousands and thousands of years of evolution to be in the present forms. Some have evolved, some have not evolved. It's all the wonders of nature. So a combination of many of these biological forms in an area which is very diverse is called biodiversity. So that's what we kind of saying, the natural growth comprising of all these things in a given area, which is very diverse. So that's basically what we call as biodiversity. So everything that we talk about is global in nature in a way. So for example, the Bhadra and Tunga river take birth in one of the, within our district in Chikmagalur, both Tunga and Bhadra, they take birth. They become together and become Tunga Bhadra. They flow down further and they become part of Krishna, which is the main river that feeds populations all the way from Chikmagalur district to Chitradurga, Karnataka, and then Andhra Pradesh and goes on. So then reaches the Bay of Bengal. So though we talk about local wildlife, protection of local forests, by protecting these areas, we are actually ensuring that the people in the lower areas of the river are ensured water supply for the full year. So this is very important to understand. So why it becomes very important to save these areas with their biodiversity and continue to preserve them is very important. So why we need to protect areas or protect biodiversity in its totality is very important again, because these are all not isolated things that we can do. We can't just have only trees. We can't just have only herbs. We can't just have only animals. This is not possible. Everything in its complexity has to be preserved in its totality. So only then we can have all these natural gifts that we have of water, of good air, and of fertile land and so on. We roughly have about 1,000 square kilometers of watershed area. Bhadra itself is about 500 odd square kilometers. So then we have the surrounding area about 300 or 400 square kilometers, which is good forested area. All that entire watershed area drains into Bhadra River. So Kudremukh is another 650, 700 square kilometers. That's where the rivers take birth. They flow some distance. Then Bhadra is another 1,000 square kilometers. All the water that drains into Bhadra. And, so that Bhadra River flows further down and joins Tungabhadra and becomes Tungabhadra rather. So I think it's about 2,000 square kilometers of area that we are talking in terms of biodiversity, rich forests, and which are water generating forests. Basically, that's what I would like to call them. So it's roughly 2,000. Of course, you have further more forests joining, and there are many other forests which contribute. So basically, what we have to think is the direct link between a forest and these rivers. You can have a small tank and you can source your water for your needs, but to support millions of people in Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, these rivers play a very, very important role. So if you want to have water, if you want to do agriculture, if you want to have large populations, their needs being satisfied, these rivers have to flow, and we have to understand the importance of these rivers and how their water is. The water sources of these rivers have to be preserved. See, for example, let's assume that it rains in a particular area. Let's say it rains in Badra. It's a tremendous amount of water. When we talk about rain, it's a tremendous amount of water. We have areas where we get 400 inches rainfall in Kudremukh. Maybe in parts of Andhra or Telangana, we just have 10 or 15 inches of rain. So what happens to this 400 inches is, I'm talking about in 1 acre, 1 inch of rain equals to 1 lakh liters, roughly. So if you're talking about 400 inches of rain, that means in 1 acre, in 1 year, you're getting 400 lakh liters of water. So that is a tremendous amount of water. So where does this water go? First, it's so beautifully done. It falls on these areas. There are hills, there are forests. So the fallen water percolates into the soil. It slowly comes out in the form of small rivulets and streams, and drips into smaller streams. The water in the forest, enhances the water holding capacity in the soil. Then there is a complete flow. It percolates very well into the soil, and the soil is different. What soil you get in Telangana or Andhra is different from the soil that is here in Kudremukh. So everything is so beautifully modified, evolved for that particular purpose. So the water that falls here percolates into the soil, comes out as small drips, and forms small streams and waterfalls and rivers, and flows throughout the year. So you can just imagine, we have water rains for June, July, August, September, maybe 4 to 6 months of rain. So it sustains the water flow for another 6 months. So you don't have rain till next May. So from June to September, you have good rains, then you have odd rains. So it's all preserved, and it slowly gives you water throughout the year. So this is something that we have to understand. So if you spoil anything, if you create an imbalance in something, whether you cut grasslands or trees, or you spoil forests, the whole system, which has taken millions of years to evolve and adopt and make this system work, that kind of is upset. So it's very, very important to understand these issues. So the other issue is also the growing population, the number of people that we are on this earth, in this country, and so on. Where are you going to get the water? So this is something that we need to give a serious thought about. So that is why in today's world, it becomes more important to preserve whatever is remaining.